the interesting thing, going back to the sort of the question of high net worth guys and gals, everyone I've met, that would meet that definition, they're incredibly approachable.
Yeah.
No one has ever, given me a cold shoulder if I've reached out for whether it's advice or information or assistance or even just to, hey, can I buy you a coffee kind of thing. And so I would, if I was 25 and knew that, I would just remember, even if you are intimidated, it doesn't matter. There's like, what's the downside? They say I'm too busy.
This is the Wealth Holders Podcast. If you want a better grasp on your future, join us on our journey from saver to wealth holder. We talk about investing, economics, and having the right mindset to help you feel confident about your finances. Here's your host, Canadian Kyle.
Hey guys, it's Canadian Kyle here at the Wealth Holders Podcast, and today we have a legend with us, Greg Smith, President of Equinox Gold, ticker symbol EQX on the Toronto Stock Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange. Greg, how are you doing today?
Not bad, Kyle. How are you?
Good. Can't complain. It's slowly warming up here in Thunder Bay, Ontario. I know you're calling in from Vancouver. Did you have the pleasure of seeing Thunder Bay yet? Fly in?
Actually, I was there for the first time in September. We recently announced the acquisition of a company that's based in Thunder Bay, and that was our first trip out that way to go meet the management team and check out some of the assets.
Are you a skier or a snowboarder? And the reason I asked this question is I heard an interview you did a couple of years ago with Jamie Keach at a KPMG. It was a live podcast, and he said something interesting that I wanted to ask you. He said that when you went to UVic, you spent the summers in Switzerland bartending. So I was like, why leave the only warm months in Canada to go to Switzerland? Like, you must love to shred.
Well, most of my time in Switzerland was in the summer anyway, but I did manage to get one winter there. And at that time I was snowboarding. So I grew up skiing, and then like a lot of people in the 90s, I switched over to snowboarding and did that for a number of years. And then when I had kids, I switched back because it was just easier to handle the kids on skis. And actually, I've been skiing ever since, and probably the last 12 years or so, and I'm loving it. Every once in a while, I'll still strap on the snowboard. For sure.
Yeah, well, bring your skis down to Thunder Bay next time. We actually have some decent slopes for a small city.
Really? Oh, I had no idea. All right.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So what else did you do with, you traveled to Switzerland? That was pretty cool. What was that like? Because I worked at a bar here in town once, and I loved the bar experience. It was awesome. You have some good memories from there?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I went to UVic, and while I was there, I did the usual, took a summer off and traveled for 4 months, through Europe, and then ended up doing an exchange to a school in Rotterdam in Holland. And then after that, I wasn't ready to go home. So I ended up getting the job in Switzerland and worked off and on in Switzerland for 3 more years. And I bartended, a good chunk of that, but I also worked in, commission sales of various adventure activities, that type of thing. Ultimately met my now wife in Switzerland. She's American, not Swiss, but she was also traveling and working in the area. And my brothers ended up coming out and working there as well. So no, it was a great time in my life for sure.
Oh, cool. You had a whole little network out there. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I still, whenever I go back to Switzerland, I try and get down to the Interlaken area and still have some friends in the area and try and swing in and say hi. And it's beautiful. It's awesome place to be for sure.
Oh, cool. So I wanna explain to the listeners, and I'm gonna try and do it and pipe up if I get anything wrong here. But for some listeners out there, they might not know Greg Smith and Equinox and the whole story. So I'm gonna just give a quick rundown, and please let me know if I get anything wrong. But you were the founder and CEO of Anthem United, and that company merged with Lowell Copper and Gold Mountain Mine to create this entity, JDL Gold Corp, where you remained CEO. And then from there, JDL Gold Corp merged with another company, Luna Gold, and the CEO of that company, Christian Malau, became the CEO of this new entity, Trek Mining, where you became president. And from then, Trek Mining merged with another two companies, Newcastle and Anfield, but Christian remained the CEO of what is now Equinox Gold, and you are now currently the president. Did I get that right?
You did. You got it 100% right.
Okay, so my question then is that when merging Anthem United to JDL Gold Corp, or any of these mergers really, because there's so many of them, how was the transition with the people and the cultures between these companies?
Actually, in that particular case, and in all cases of the transactions we've done, I guess so far, or at least as part of this more recent journey, it's all been very smooth. And you know, some of those early transactions that we did in 2016 there, you know, the concept of putting the companies together was really a group effort of the people that were involved in those companies. We, you know, at the time, relatively small companies, good shareholder base, good people involved, some good assets, but just given the scale of the companies, hard to do a whole lot, right? And so we, you know, the people involved with the three companies at the time that we merged together to form JDL all agreed, and none of these were large companies with you know, big staff, you know, big employee lists or anything like that. So we wanted to go build a company. We put them together. You know, Christian was CEO at the time of Luna Gold, and I actually was on the board of Luna Gold, and so we knew each other from that perspective, and ended up putting those two companies together. That's when I took on the president role, and Christian was CEO. And then the transaction that really founded Equinox, and when the sort of the Equinox story really began, is when Ross Beatty got involved with his Anfield Gold company, and Richard Wark had Newcastle. And when we put those three companies together, that was really sort of the founding of Equinox Gold. That's really where the Equinox Gold story itself begins. And in all cases, in all those transactions that we did do to get to that point, the transition was pretty smooth. You know, again, smaller companies, like-minded people that had a common goal, you know, to go build a gold company, saw those transactions as a way to accomplish that. And so it was really actually very smooth. And then as you get larger, right, we did some more transactions where you're now, you know, as we've grown this company through development and M&A, you know, you're hiring people, you're acquiring assets or companies, and then you do have a little more of what I'll call integration challenges, or those integration issues that are natural, right? And not everyone gets to stick around in those cases, and so some people have to go, and of course, some people stay. As you're growing a company, you need more people, and it's always a challenging period as you grow, but ultimately, you know, you treat people the right way and develop the company in a responsible fashion. You know, these things tend to work out. But yeah, definitely one of the more you know, interesting, sometimes unpleasant, but very necessary parts of growing a company, you know, is those integration and transition periods.
Mm-hmm. So mergers and acquisitions, they're common in the resource space. And I would consider you, as I'm assuming a lot of people would, as a serial entrepreneur. And your background's actually in accounting, right? And they don't teach you this in accounting. It's through being self-taught, through mentors, through experience and mistakes. So I really want to touch on the self-taught part, and specifically reading, because you have to self-teach somehow. And I think reading's one of the best ways. And I know you read the book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. So my question is, do you think every aspiring CEO should be reading that book? Because there's a lot of amazing content in that book.
It is, you know, it is a great book. And, you know, whether you're a CEO or a CFO or anybody that's, you know, sole proprietor, I mean, starting a business or building a business or operating a business, it's always challenging. There's always issues. There's always, you know, things that are going to keep you up at night, and it could be small things, right? You never stop thinking about it. And one of the things you just have to accept is that it's extremely difficult. There's a huge amount of stress associated with it, and you have to be able to just acknowledge that and accept it, and you know, be able to operate effectively in that environment. And it's been a while since I read that book. It was a good one, and it did resonate because, you know, I've been involved in a couple different companies over my career, and especially mining, right? Mining's a really a diversity of challenges is what I would characterize it as. There's always something that you got to deal with, whether it's geology or commodity prices or financing or governments or communities or the environment or whatever. There's always something, right? Yeah. And so you have to be able to operate in sort of a high stress environment and know that the baseline is that you're constantly putting out fires at the same time that you're creating value, and that's just the way it is. And so it's important that people in this industry kind of understand that, and frankly, investors in the mining industry,
yeah,
would,
for sure,
would be served well to understand that too. It's a volatile industry.
That's why I was recommending the book. And luckily for you, I know you might not have read it in a while, so I wrote down some powerful quotes from it. And take this discussion however you like, but I'm just going to say a few and just take the discussion based off your trials and tribulations. Here are a few good ones. If you're going to eat shit, don't nibble. There are only two emotions in startups: euphoria and terror. And needs always trump wants when it comes to mergers and acquisitions. So what do you think of all that?
Boy, well, I like the middle one there with the euphoria and terror, and that's especially true when you're first starting. You've got maybe one asset, and you get some great drilling news, and then all of a sudden you get some bad news. Gold price goes down or something, or you have a road blockade or something happens, right? And you kind of vacillate between, things are going great. Oh man, things are tough. And again, it's as volatile as maybe the share prices are in the industry or the commodity prices. So is sort of operating these types of companies. As you mature in your company, we have a lot of assets now. You get that diversified portfolio, and you're always going to have some great news in some, and maybe some not so great news in the others, and that starts to balance out a bit, right? But in the high growth period of building a company, especially when you're kind of everything rests, you got a lot of eggs in one basket. That is 100% true. And again, you have to just accept that that's the case and be able to manage and operate through that. If you're going to eat shit, never nibble. I guess it's just, it's kind of that dare to be great, or if you're going to go, if you believe in it, if you have conviction, go all in, and hopefully it works out, but sometimes it won't. And maybe that's when you got to eat shit. I don't know, but that's a good quote.
Yeah, I like it too. So how did you manage stress personally throughout your career? Because I think this would help with investors as well as people in this space. Is it physical activity? Like, what was your release?
Yeah, I guess physical activity for sure. Maintaining, I guess, a good network both in the industry and then just with your friends and stuff, and making sure that you get out there and commiserate, and you're not alone in kind of your pain. This industry is pretty tight knit, and especially guys and gals that have been in the industry longer than I have, they've seen everything, right? They've seen this movie 100 times, and it's kind of easier to talk through issues with people that have seen it before and dealt with it before. And I might be panicking about something, and then you go talk to a guy like Ross Beatty, who's our chairman, and 99% of the time he's totally relaxed. And you kind of get used to that cycle, right? Like, yes, there's always going to be problems, and you have to, again, try to remain calm. Just personally, I read a lot and try and read books about building businesses, and you can kind of see how people dealt with it themselves. And lately I've been reading a lot of stoicism and books on stoicism and kind of embracing that philosophy a little bit. But yeah, time with my family now, I like getting away if I can, like going to Whistler or just getting in the North Shore Mountains and hiking or whatever the case is, that type of stuff.
Very nice. Have you read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell?
God, years ago.
Because I would consider, and I want to know your thought on this. I'd consider you an outlier because you started your career right at the beginning of a big gold bull run where they needed accountants. And even to today now, like, we're looking at probably another big run in the gold price. And now you're positioned in a mid-tier company, soon major. So,
you bring up a good point, which is I started in KPMG in their mining practice right in like 2000, more or less. And at that point, mining had been dead for a lot of years, and then it started to take off there. And the mining practice was pretty small, and you had some other things that were happening in the industry. I mean, you started to see a gold bull run happening, and the companies were were starting to get more active in building mines and raising money and doing M&A. And you also had, I'm a chartered accountant by trade, and so you also had Sarbanes-Oxley coming in and a bunch of new regulations around your financial statements and your audits. And so there was just this huge demand from the public resource companies, mining companies for accountants that had any experience at all in mining. And so a bunch of us were kind of lucky from that perspective. We were really busy at KPMG, had a lot of great clients, they were growing, and then they all started hiring us out of the firm. And so the first sort of 8 years of my career in mining was just one big growth oriented sort of bull market. And that kind of came to a brief halt there in 2008, and then started up again in 2009. And then, 2012, 13, where it kind of turned the other way. That was definitely a rude awakening. You suddenly you're going through a bear market. It's a really, really different experience, than when everything's kind of going great, the gold price is going up, and there's lots of, activity around that. At that time you can start to look for value, right? There's a lot more assets for sale. There's not a lot of financing though, so you have to get creative. You're trying to buy assets in a down market, because if you do it right and you get a hold of good assets when the prices are low, it's a cyclical industry. They're going to come back, and they always do, and they have been lately. So it's nice to see it kind of play out that way. But that was kind of the focus, and really, guys who have been through it more times than I have can attest to it more than I can. But it's the bear markets. It's what you do in those bear markets. If you stick around and you're tenacious and you persevere through those tough times and kind of build up your asset base and your interest in some of these properties and companies, that's how you make real money. It's over the long term and the long game. I think in this industry that you really create wealth both for shareholders and for yourself. A lot of people kind of go in and out, right? Especially more on the services side, or the brokerages and that type of thing, right? If cannabis is hot, everyone moves into cannabis. Bitcoin's hot, everyone moves into Bitcoin. When mining suddenly heats up, they all move back over it. It's a whole different kind of way of playing the markets, and it's just not the way I've kind of run my career. But I do believe, when times get tough, that is really when you have to start thinking of it in terms of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And you've been spending all this time building this company now, so let's get into Equinox Gold here. And I think the best way to understand Equinox Gold is to understand one of your largest the chairman, Ross Beatty. And it's funny because he made his fortunes in the extractive industries, but he's a huge proponent for nature conservation and preservation. So maybe explain to the younger audience who doesn't know Ross Beatty as well. Like, they heard the name. I'm sure many people have heard the name, but who is he, and why did he pick you for his right-hand man?
Well, I don't know that I'd characterize myself as Ross's right-hand man, or that he chose me for that role. But going back to Ross and who Ross is, I would encourage your listeners, Google him. Ross does a lot of interviews, a lot of articles on Ross, and there's a lot of evidence of what he's accomplished that you could find on the internet far more efficiently than talking to me. But generally, Ross is a kind of a serial entrepreneur, mostly in the resources space. He's the founder of Pan American Silver. He founded Altera Energy and eventually sold that into Interjex. He's had a number of public copper companies as well, and so that's kind of his. And he's an investor, a really prolific investor in the resource space. On the flip side, as you point out, he is a total environmentalist, and philanthropist, and he's got the Sitka Foundation and focuses a lot of his time and effort on conservation and biodiversity and things like that, nature related philanthropy. And so, and there is overlap. You look at the resource industry, you look at the mining industry, and environmental protection, and environmental protection is a huge part of what we do in the extractive industry. So they're not mutually exclusive, and nor do they directly contradict each other, right? To build out, green energy and electrification, you need metals. There's just no way around it. So, and Ross recognizes that, and has been able to I think really effectively balance those two aspects of his career. over the years. But the other side of Ross, he's a like I said, serial entrepreneur, hard driver, action-oriented guy, and really when we did that deal to form Equinox Gold in 2017, that was really kind of adding fuel to the fire, bringing Ross in as chairman and kind of having the support and a mandate, right from the top to go build, a quality, meaningful gold company of scale. That's what really kind of unleashed, I guess, unleashed is the wrong word, but I guess really made this whole thing really interesting for me, and for Christian as well. And, having our team, we've always been sort of goal oriented toward building a company. And then when you have that sort of not just support, but also really a directive from a guy like Ross, who's got, an immense amount of resources and contacts and credibility in the industry. It's a powerful sort of combination and kind of allowed us to really start executing on that plan.
Mm-hmm. And you guys make it well known to the public too. Like, I wonder how much of it was Ross's hand at play with your website, though. I was looking at the website, and you guys have something I've never seen at another company's website is the transparency for ESG, the environmental, social, and governance. Is it quarterly report that's available to the public? And you guys show that you're accountable. Like, yes, we reached this goal. No, we did not reach this goal. So maybe touch on that a little more.
Yeah. So it's interesting. We're a growing company, and so this aspect of our company is growing at the same time, right? And when it comes to ESG, a lot of the things that most mining companies, Canadian mining companies in particular, do anyway on a normal course basis, are I think exceed or of the highest quality sort of standards when it comes to ESG. But it's the measurement, the monitoring, the reporting side of it that's becoming a lot more important. And that's just because the investor community is becoming a lot more, I think, focused on ESG. I mean, mining companies need to do the right thing in the countries they operate, both because of the law, but also for the communities, et cetera. Do the right thing is kind of the baseline, operating mantra that you want to go into any kind of project with. But, what we're finding and what we've really seen, and I've seen personally in the last couple of years, is whenever we go meet, institutions, they're much more focused on ESG. We're having, large shareholders will ask us, can we do a full separate ESG meeting where, we do a whole different deck, and that's all we talk about. It could be an hour, 2 hours. There's more sort of ESG related funds being created where they're only going to invest in, in the top ranked or top companies with a high score, high ESG related score. And there's a number of different, what's the right word here? Standards organizations that are sort of have come up that companies are working to comply with. And, hopefully some of those start to merge up and you get a more consistent and standard group that you can kind of, or set of standards that you can comply with. But, Equinox over the last couple of years is really putting a focus on this, and not just in everything we're doing, but also making sure that we're capturing the information, we're reporting it correctly. And if we are seeing areas where we can improve, making sure that we do improve. Ultimately, that'll affect, it'll help, give us the license to operate, or the social license to operate in the jurisdictions where we already are. It'll give communities and governments and other stakeholders comfort when we move into new jurisdictions. And it also gives our shareholders or potential shareholders comfort, and lenders too, that, that we're doing the right thing and they can trust that the areas we're operating in, we're doing it in a responsible and environmentally and socially focused manner. But yeah, bottom line is it's become substantially more important, just I think generally in the industry, and in particular for the shareholders, or all shareholders in the mining industry, and then also just within our company itself. When you're smaller, the expectations aren't as robust, I suppose. But now as we've grown, we really need to kind of get there, and we want to be the best. We're striving to be kind of a leader in that area. So yeah, what you see on the website, I think we're going to have our first sort of annual, ESG large report come out at some point this year. And I don't know exactly when. And We're going to have, some more specific tailings facility reports coming on, and these are things we're going to make available on the website as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, I was just going to ask you actually about that, about tailings, because it's the tailings that kind of left a scar on this industry. Mines produce tailings. Like what does Equinox do for tailings, and how are they making sure it's as safe as possible for the environment?
Yeah, so I mean, different mines have different types of waste or tailings, whatever the case is. Some of our mines are heap leach operations, in which case all of your wasted ore is sitting on a pad already, right? It's basically stacked on a mountain. It's not part of a tailings facility, so to speak. But some of our mines do have a tailings dam or a tailings facility associated with them. And we put a lot of time into this as well. We have an independent tailings review board that we put together a couple of years ago. That's made up of independent engineers that oversee or at least monitor what we're doing from a tailings perspective, how we're designing them, how we're building them, how we're monitoring them, how we're maintaining them. So that's completely, independent of the company, but put together to oversee the company. We also obviously make sure that we're complying with any, local laws or regulations or requirements. But beyond that, we focus, primarily on downstream type tailings facilities, which are traditionally a lot safer. They're a little more expensive, but they're just a safer type of facility. And there's an organization called Towards Sustainable Mining Protocols, and we're a part of that and working to implement those protocols. And in those protocols, there's tailings management protocols as well. So we're going to be able to then measure against those protocols what we're doing with our tailings facilities. But it's hugely important, right? I mean, a tailings dam failure is not just catastrophic for the environment or other people, but it is for your company as well. And it's a risk that has to be managed carefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's a good segment for what I also wanted to touch on is that can you go into Equinox's executive and incentive plans that you guys have in place?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not too different than other companies. I mean, obviously, as the company's grown, our compensation assessment and how we're compensated has become more formalized and refined. I mean, back several years ago, we had a salary and it went up a little bit every year, and some of us started in the company pretty low salaries or even no salaries in some cases. And I think our general philosophy internally, all of us at the senior level have been with Equinox for a number of years and often right from the beginning. And some of the guys came from the legal side, which is the merger we did last year. But all of us own stock, all of us purchased our stock. We're all, owners in the company. We think like owners. Our compensation is designed to be, owner friendly or shareholder friendly. So, it's based on performance. We have certain targets we're trying to meet. We meet those targets. You get paid for performance. It's a mix of longer term incentives and shorter term incentives. We obviously look at what other mining companies are doing in terms of their compensation, and we're not trying to be at the top end of that whatsoever, but we want to be fair so that we can attract the right people and make sure that the team sticks around and is being fairly compensated for the work they're doing. But bottom line is, like Christian, myself, Pete, like all of us invested a fair bit of our own money into this company over the last number of years, and so that that's first and foremost. I'll make a lot more money from stock appreciation than I ever will from my base salary here. So so that's really what we kind of focus on is the long game and accreting value to the shares.
No doubt. Now let's talk about the long game, because you're the first mid-tier mine I've had on the podcast. I've been talking a lot about royalty companies, but why don't you make the case for a mid-tier mine instead of a royalty or other competition in the industry?
Well, two very different things, right? And I've got a lot of I own royalty companies. I've got a lot of friends in royalty companies, and I think it's a great business model. The challenge with a royalty company is finding royalties, to acquire at valuations that make sense, and it's a pretty competitive business from that perspective. For a mining company, especially a producing mining company, it's too long for this podcast, but I've met with some people in the past to kind of make the case, but when you look at, if you're a believer in the gold price as an example, and a mining company has, let's just say, a margin of $500 an ounce, right?
Right.
If the gold price, moves over a year or so, a couple $100, that might be a 10% increase in the gold price, let's just say. But in your margin, that's going to be a 50% increase in the margin of that gold company. And so you've got, obviously leverage to an increase in gold price through just the massive increase in margin against the increase in the gold price. Then you also have the ability of creating, a huge amount of value through the drill bit, right? If you've got, like, look at our Aurizona mine in Brazil.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly prospective project. So let's say you have 1 million ounces in reserve. That's great. If I can find another 1 million ounces for, $30 an ounce of exploration costs, but I create, another $300, $400 million of NAV, it's just such a massive return on that investment. So when you have your mining company, you've secured, good prospective projects with good exploration potential. So you've got production, you've got that leverage to the margin. You also have the leverage to exploration success, which could add, net asset value. And so whenever we look at these things, a mining company just has so many opportunities to create value. And so that's the pitch I make. And of course, it matters what type of assets you have and where they are, and how prospective they are. And there's always risk associated with exploration and production. But but it's exciting, right? It's an industry where you could have a small mine that suddenly you make a major discovery and it becomes a much larger mine, and you've created a huge amount of value in a very short period of time. And so I like that. I like, as we've built out the portfolio, you then have optionality, right? You've got some mines that have all this exploration and growth potential, and you focus on those. You've got other ones that are maybe higher grade, shorter mine life, but really high margins that are providing the cash flow. And you've got a whole bunch of different levers you can pull to create value depending on the circumstance or where it makes the best sense to allocate capital.
Right. Well, let's talk about the newest addition to your portfolio. It's actually not too far away from me. And my cousin actually lives in Geraldton in the Hard Rock project. There's been a lot of buzz about it. People have said there's been gold there for years. A lot of people have been excited. And now it's nice to see such a prestigious company come in and actually claim that deposit. So why did Equinox pick the Hard Rock project and decide to put its chips on that project?
Well, it's, Hard Rock is a, 5.5 million ounce reserve project in Canada, right off a highway in a populated area in Ontario, which is a great mining jurisdiction. It's got its permits for construction. It's got the support of the First Nation communities and the local communities. From our perspective, that's an incredibly rare situation to have an asset like that. The quality of Hard Rock, the scale of Hard Rock, how advanced it is in terms of engineering, permitting, social, to have an asset like that available to buy at a valuation that makes any sense to a company like Equinox is extremely rare. So, for us, we saw, tremendous value, first of all, in acquisition of the asset. And then from a bigger picture, we look at our overall portfolio. It provides another country in terms of diversity of jurisdiction. Its scale, it's a large mine with a long mine life. So it increases our overall, mine life, our reserves per share, our production per share, our cash flow per share. So from is this an accretive, good transaction for Equinox that's going to, accrete value to the company over many, many years? Absolutely. And then you look at the growth potential in Hard Rock. We're talking about only the open pit. There's also an underground deposit there that over time we'll work on refining that, but that could be a whole nother aspect to the mine, either increasing production or increasing the mine life over time. That whole district of sort of Geraldton, and as you kind of go west, I guess from there, it's very prospective. There's a whole bunch of satellite deposits near Hard Rock that over time will probably contribute some ore to that mine. And then as you move maybe 50 or 60 kilometers away, you hit the Brookbank deposit, which is a higher grade open pit and underground deposit that also could feed Hard Rock. So we just see, huge amount of exploration potential. and then the current mine as engineered is just being a rare and valuable asset that we're really keen to acquire. And with Orion coming on as a 50% partner, we know those guys well. Obviously, they're very well capitalized. They want to see this mine built and as much as we do, and so I think it's a good opportunity for us to come into Canada into a project of scale and quality, but with a financial partner and partner in the mine. It just manages our risk. It'll be a pretty big bite for Equinox by itself, but with Orion along with us, it's very achievable for us to acquire and then develop that project.
Mm-hmm. And when's the first pour expected?
We haven't come out with anything formally. I mean, it's
right.
Just based on the timelines that Premier and Greenstone Gold, the company that has the hard rock deposit, have been working toward. It's probably late 2023, with 2024 being the first full year of production.
Right. Very cool. It's exciting. I know a lot of people excited for this project to get underway, so it's pretty exciting.
I think it'll be great for Geraldton and even Thunder Bay, as a staging area. And we're really keen on it. And the response we've gotten, not just from shareholders, but also from stakeholders in the Thunder Bay and Geraldton sort of region has been really positive. I think a lot of people would like to see that mine moving toward production as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. So that's the newest asset to your portfolio. What about the other assets in your portfolio? How did they fare during COVID? How was your diversification? Because you have mines in Brazil, the States, Canada, Mexico. How did you guys fare during COVID?
I mean, it was a challenge. We had to very quickly implement, safety. Obviously, it was the first priority. It's keeping the employees safe and uninfected as much as possible. Also complying with sort of rapidly changing, evolving regulations. That at some point, Mexico actually shut down, basically mining for a while. Then they reopened. In Brazil, we had a couple of mines that we suspended operations for a few weeks in response to local government requests, and then had those come back online. But basically, what we did is, as quickly as possible, we engaged some companies to help us set up on-site testing and rapid testing using PCR tests. And we just started a process of testing people between rotations, and obviously anyone felt sick, they had to go home and quarantine, and it became, it was a very acute challenge initially, and then as the months have gone by, it's now become kind of just a normal course operations, right? The whole COVID.
People adapt quick, yeah.
Yeah, the COVID management aspect is kind of less exciting now, and certainly much less of a challenge than it was when things started to ramp up there March, April, May last year. For
sure. I have one more question before we go into the recurrent segment of Vault, and that's I know Ross Beatty stated that he wants to end his career with the same name he started his career, but you seem to be a guy that doesn't sit still. So is Equinox Gold going to be your last mine, or are you planning on just keep on trucking and building companies? It seems like you love building companies.
Well, I mean, it's certainly, I certainly enjoy it. And right now the company I'm focused on is Equinox. And I think that, we've accumulated and put together a really great portfolio of assets here. We now need to execute on the development and sort of operation of those assets. I think we're really undervalued, and that's okay. We've always kind of said, well, we'll just prove you wrong, right? We'll deliver on our portfolio and our plans and our projections, and we're just going to continue to do that. So I'm in Equinox right now is the focus. I want to keep building it where it makes sense and kind of optimizing the portfolio. And like I said, I'm a shareholder. I want to see the shares go up and create value for people. And I've been involved in some other things here and there over time. I've started to eliminate a lot of those and really focus on the Equinox universe, which right now for us is Equinox and our interest in Solaris Resources, and then soon our interest in i-80 Gold, which will be a new Nevada-based gold company as part of this Premier transaction.
Right.
And so you only have so much bandwidth. So that's really where I'm focused. And it's kind of fun to have that diversity, right? Equinox is the mothership, but then these other companies that are a little smaller and also, focused on a kind of a growth phase. I get to kind of be involved in those from a board perspective and shareholder perspective as well. But I'm only, I'm 45 years old, so I've got, hopefully a long career ahead of me, and so I plan to be in this industry. It's really the only industry I've ever been involved in, and have no intention of leaving.
Yeah, you found your passion early, hey, so that's good to hear. Now let's get into the vault now. I know we're getting close on time. So in the vault, I just ask questions more personal and looking for mentorship here. And there are more questions about you instead of the company that you're working for. And the first question I have is what did you learn from your parents at a young age that has stuck with you till today?
Probably more just, they lead by example in a way, both my mom and dad. And so they divorced when I was a kid. And so my mom was, a single mom, and my dad was a single dad, the way it worked out. My dad was also a bit of a serial entrepreneur and really was focused on sales. He always encouraged me to go get my accounting designation, because he said, it got every company I'm involved with, the accountants, they seem to do the best, they seem to either be leading it or involved in the senior management, and he just thought that was a good route to go, which of course meant I didn't want to do it and had no plans on doing it, and I ended up doing it anyway, sort of almost by coincidence. But my dad was right. It's great having that designation, but I think in a lot of ways I take after him. I like the sales aspect. I like the entrepreneurial aspect a lot more than I like the accounting piece, but I definitely am happy I have the accounting designation. It's nice to have that, just the experience and the credibility of having that designation. And, my mom was also a hard worker, and, we didn't come from a lot of money, and so, really just work hard, and that's the best way to kind of make something for yourself over time. I other than that, my parents are both, they're good people, and again, focus on doing the right thing and whatever the circumstances are, and try and make them proud by doing that myself and passing that on to my kids.
Perfect. The next question I have is that, could you name a wealth holder or a high net worth individual? And I know you know a lot of them, so you don't have to say names if you don't want, or go ahead. But what is something they taught you throughout your career, more along the lines of your career?
Well, it's an interesting question. Yeah, I mean, the one that comes to mind just sort of right away is Dave Lowell, and part of it's probably because he passed away last year, and right in the middle of COVID, and so it was kind of a tough situation. You couldn't really honor him properly, but he, Dave was a billionaire, and he made his money through discovery, and through his own sort of education and experience and tenacity and sort of perseverance and testing theories, and if they didn't work, moving on, and when they did work, going all in and creating value. And he he wrote a book called The Intrepid Explorer, and I've mentioned it to people before, and it's a good book. It goes through his whole career, and Dave banged rocks together most of his career, and then as with experience and with having the right people in his orbit, he then was able to create a few public companies, and those companies were phenomenally successful, and his legacy remains because Solaris Resources, I mean, the Warintza project that Solaris is developing right now and exploring right now, that was a Dave Lowell project. He worked on that project. He was responsible for developing the initial resource. He selected that project when he had the opportunity to acquire it, and that company now is a $600 or $700 million company again, right? So Dave is just career is so inspiring, and his involvement in the industry over decades and decades is something that I think about a lot, because it again, volatile industry, things will work out, things won't, But if you're patient and tenacious and you kind of do the right things over the course of your career, those opportunities and those wins are going to come, right? And you know, it never really changed Dave. Dave just kept doing what he was doing. You know, became a bit of a philanthropist and gave a lot of his wealth away, but otherwise focused on what he loved, which was continuing to explore and look at projects and come up with theories. And you know, that's a guy who found his passion early and did it, you know, through his entire life. So, you know, Dave is a guy I think about a lot, and obviously, you know, working with Ross and one of our shareholders is Lucas Landine and Richard Wark, and all these guys are obviously have done really, really well in the industry. And again, they take big risks, and when they work out, they do extremely well. And that's the thing; it's a bit of a risk game, and you know, fortune favors the bold is something that we talk about a lot internally.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Last question is more directed toward my age and my demographic, and that's any advice you could provide over the years of your experience for a 25-year-old like myself that just started in his journey in life.
Yeah, let me think about that. I think back to when I was in my 20s, and I was ambitious, but I was very unfocused, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I was bartending in Switzerland and going to school and looking for work. And, you know, I guess what I would say is when you find something that interests you, you know, don't, you know, debate the pros and cons forever. Don't sit there and do research for the next 5 years, debating what you want to do or just talking about it or blogging about it or writing. Like, just do it, right? Just take action of some kind, you know, as aggressively as you can and as quickly as you can. And that's been something that I've seen just throughout my career. You know, there's some companies and people that it's paralysis by analysis, and they talk a lot, but they just never pick up the phone and start doing, trying to execute it. And if I go back, you know, when I was 25, I'd focus more on the long game. You know, I'd start investing earlier. I'd start, you know, trying to really execute on what I want to do more aggressively sooner. Trying to network better. Try and meet the right people. Try and foster those relationships. And to be fair, I didn't know about much. Like, it's not necessarily mining, but you know, you're starting a blog. You're creating content. You know, I'm sure you're going to keep doing that. And as you have some success, you know, build off that success. And it's just one of those things like I just think action and aggressive action is so valuable, and it's actually more rare than you think. You know, people talk about things.
I wouldn't have done this without a good friend of mine. Like we're kind of talking about it for a year, and then it was because of him. He helped me get out there, and taking action is the biggest thing. And I also agree with the networking, and that's why I wanted to do this. I want to know more about the people behind my investments, and what's a better way than to get you on the other line and ask the questions I want answers to.
Yeah, exactly. Just you know, and the interesting thing, you know, going back to the sort of the question of high net worth guys and gals, everyone I've met, you know, that would meet that definition, they're incredibly approachable. You know, no one has ever, you know, given me a cold shoulder if I've reached out for whether it's advice or information or assistance or even just to, you know, hey, can I buy you a coffee kind of thing. And so I would, you know, if I was 25 and knew that, I would just remember, don't even if you are intimidated, just, it doesn't matter. There's like, what's the downside? They say I'm too busy. Big deal. Right? So, but I found that's not the case. Most of them will make time. So it's something to think about, right? Like you only live once. And so what do you have to lose by putting yourself out there a little bit and you know, being a little more aggressive?
Yeah. Like yourself, you gave me an hour of your time, and I can't thank you enough for it. I was nervous coming into it. I was thinking about it all day, but easy to talk to, Greg. I think we learned a lot here, and I want to thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Oh, no problem, Kyle. I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, thank you, and have a great day.
Disclaimer. The Wealth Holders podcast is for entertainment purposes only, not financial advice. We might hold investments in some featured companies. Always do proper due diligence and speak to a professional before investing. We take no responsibility in the performance of your investments. Past success does not indicate future performance.